Alright, so for our pen drawing, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be using pens from here on out. So at this point you should be finished with your pencil drawing of your architecture. Now there were a few people in person that decided to choose a little bit of like an enrichment part of this project where instead of doing architecture they're doing something else, but this demo should apply to any subject matter that you choose. So whether you're doing a skeleton, a portrait, whatever, you use the same techniques and you use the same concepts with the four different types of techniques. Okay, so the first thing that we want to talk about with pen when you start your pen project and the pen part of the project is this is basically a value mapping technique, the same way that you would value map with a pencil or with colored pencils. You're going to do the same thing with a pen. So if you take a look at your value scale, okay, and you just kind of imagine this value scale from 1 to 10. Typically I like to use a 10-step value scale because it gives me a wider range of values. But anything between as dark as you can go and as light as you can go, you want to try to get all of those values into your project so that you have a high contrast. Okay, contrast is one of the bigger principles that we focus on. So we want to get that really wide range of values to get a very high contrast, like you see in your value scale. So here's how this is going to start off. The first thing that I wanted to show you is, and I didn't really talk about in the previous tutorial, is how to do a gradation. Alright, so I have a couple strips of paper up here, and this might be a good thing to just kind of practice in your sketchbook before you start. So when you do gradation, okay, gradation is a gradual change from light to dark. Okay, now you did this in your value scale with the pencil previously, but a gradation scale is, I'm going to show you just with gesture really quick. Gesture is a controlled scribble. Gradation is when you gradually change from light to dark. Alright, so now that I have this darker value, I may want to switch over, because this is an 05, that's as thick as we go. I may want to switch to an 03. And I'm going to gradually let my values fade out. So this is a gradation where it gradually changes from dark to light. Okay? So that's just with gesture. You could do the same thing with cross-hatching. Now, what I like to do, personally, when I do a gradation with cross-hatching, I like to do my lighter values first. Okay? Because when you think about it, it's kind of like when you use watercolor, you can only go darker. Alright, you cannot make your pen lighter once you've already put your value down. So for example, if I start this cross-hatching technique, I can't make that any lighter than it is because I've already done it and pen is permanent. Okay, so I can only go over more and more to make it darker. So for a gradation, what I like to do is I like to do my entire scale with a light value. And then I like to go in, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop just short of where I left off. And then I'm going to go over it again. Okay, I'll do some vertical lines here. And I'm going to stop just short of where I left off before that. And then I can do some horizontal lines, leaving all of these lines short of where I just left off. And then I can just continue, always leaving it just a little bit shorter than where I was. And eventually I'm going to cross so many times that it's really just going to become a number 10 value, and that's how you show gradation with cross-hatching. Okay, so I do all my light values first, and then I just go and continue to shorten it until I get this really dark coverage. Now, a little secret, I'm going to be honest, this isn't how I wanted you to do it in your value scale, but a little secret is when you get to a 10 value, okay, nobody's going to know if you just shade it in. Okay, it's a 10 value, it's as dark as you can go. Don't feel like you have to continuously crosshatch the entire time. Okay, now with pen, you do need to take your time. All right, because if you rush, a lot of times you're going to make some mistakes and you are going to get into a little trouble with that. So that's how you do a gradation. Now, as you know, in realistic images, okay, you are going to have a lot of gradation. So I wanted to show you that ahead of time. I guess really quick, I'll show you what stippling would do. Stippling, all you do is you make as many dots as you can and you just let your dots fade out to create that gradation. Okay, so those are the three techniques that we're going to focus on. Hatching is kind of the same as cross hatching, except you just go in one direction, but that's good. Okay, so how do you apply this to your project? I would personally advise you to start off light and then continue to go dark. So let's just say I'm doing cross hatching and I want to work on this section right here. Okay, whenever you do this, I would recommend doing one piece at a time. So for your hand project, a lot of you did a really nice job of focusing on one segment of your hand at a time, and it really allowed you to get that nice detail. And then with the backgrounds, if you did like leaves, a lot of people focused on one little leaf at a time. I know it takes longer, but if we're going for an accurate rendering, sometimes that's just what we need to do. So I like to focus on one thing at a time. With that said, what I would like you to do is I would like you to not use a ruler, okay? Now, I got a quick story for you. When I was in high school, I was a junior in high school, and my art teacher presented a pen and ink drawing, okay? And it was actually something very similar to this one. So, I picked a reference photo, and I started my drawing. And it took me 9 weeks. It took me the entire 9 weeks to finish the project because I was so caught up in the detail and I was such a perfectionist at that point in my life that I was literally creating lines like this with a ruler. And I did that for the entire project. Now, it worked out for me. I think I ended up getting a gold key for that one at Scholastics. But that is not what we are going to do for this project because that would take us forever. And we only have 6 more weeks left. So this project we're going to probably do in about 3 weeks. But you are going to do your cross hatching. And I like to start with my lighter value. So that's a pretty light value. Now if I go over here, I notice that some areas are light and some are dark. So what I want to do, and I've talked to you about this before, art is all about what you can see. Okay, so I notice there's a little patch over here that's really dark. Okay, I'm going to kind of cut a few corners and just make sure that's really dark right there. But I'm going to really carefully, I notice that this edge is darker, so I'm going to cross hatch more. And it's even darker than that, so I'm going to cross hatch some more. Okay, if you have a nice solid edge, I like to kind of go along the edge and make it nice and clean and sharp. Okay, but we have more textures going on too. So sometimes your cross hatching is going to need to be a little bit more particular to the actual surface that you're trying to shade in with a pen. Okay, so we have a really dark edge here. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to continue to go over this from different angles to get that value. And just like before with our pencil drawing with the hand, when we think about value mapping, we want to look at our image and we want to ask ourselves, what value is this? Okay, so if you're using cross hatching, go ahead and pull out your, this is a little bit different of a setup, but go ahead and pull out your value scale. Ask yourself, what value is that? So if you look over here, if this is your 4 value on a 6-step value scale, if this was a 10-step, this would be like a 7 or 6. So you want to make sure that you apply this value right here. Okay? If you have a dark value, okay, like let's say this solid piece up here, well, that is probably your darkest value. So you're going to want to make sure you go in and you really make that nice and dark. Okay? Leaving the negative space. Alright? Remember, always start light, because once you go this dark, you can't lighten it up. Okay? It's impossible with a pen. So always start light and just continue to go over and over until you get it dark enough. Okay? Now, there are obviously different techniques than just cross-hatching. Okay? Personally, I wouldn't be done with this yet. I would continue to go in, making sure I get the correct value, etc. If you're doing stippling, well, stippling is actually the easiest technique because you're just creating a bunch of dots. But with stippling, you're just going to continue to make dots until your value is as dark as it needs to be. So if I'm working on this edge of this column right here, okay, like more particularly right here, well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a ton of dots. Okay, a bunch of dots, and I'm lightly picking up my pen, and I'm going to okay, so you're going to go in, you're going to fill in your entire project. There's one more thing that I wanted to talk about before I let you go, and that is, this is called selective mark making. So one thing that's really cool about this project is that we are focusing on a specific part of the building. Okay, we're not doing the whole thing, and we want to capture all those really cool ornate details. Okay, like the railing up here, and the top piece up here, and the little statues on top of each kind of section of the building. All right, but down at the bottom, do you see how I kind of just let it fade out? Okay, that's called selective mark making. What the purpose of that is, me as the artist, what I'm trying to accomplish is I want the viewer, so whoever looks at this piece, I want them to focus on the detail and focus on the ornate aspects of this building. Okay? I don't necessarily want them to focus down here. Okay, I want to draw their attention to the detail. So what I did down here, okay, it might look a little bit messy, but it's meant to be kind of expressive. What I did down here was I let the pen just kind of fade off, so that whoever looks at this picture is not going to look down here. They're going to focus in on these really nice, neat, ornate aspects to my pen drawing. Okay? So that's just an additional thing. If you wanted to just finish this off, so if you wanted to do all this, you can do that, or I didn't do that. You can add all the detail over here. That's up to you. If you want to just finish it off all the way to the edge, that's fine. But this is kind of a cool little technique that you can do, and you really have to make sure you let it fade all the way out. Okay, so because if you just stop on a dime and you don't add all these lines that let it just kind of disappear, then it's going to look a little funny. Okay, now obviously you see some watercolor in here. Watercolor will be 100% enrichment. Okay, you will not be graded on watercolor. Watercolor is something that is just an additional feature to the project. If you are somebody at home and you want to add that, you can do that. You could also probably get away with using colored pencil. We just want to make sure that we're not covering up the pen So that's why we use or an art medium like watercolor, because watercolor you can put right over pen. The pen is still going to show through, and it's permanent, so it's not going to smudge or smear or anything like that. So it's just kind of a cool feature. Okay, so if you have any more questions about how to add pen to your reference using value mapping, make sure you email me, let me know. I can always come up with additional demonstrations, things like that. But in the meantime, you're just going to continue Do you see the line that I just drew? Probably not, right? So not every line needs to be perfect. All right, so if you make a mistake, sometimes you just got to run with it, and you just got to problem solve and work around it. Okay, so you can add lines, you can make mistakes, but I just don't want you to stress about the mistakes. I don't want you to think you have to start over every time you mess up. This is meant to be kind of an expressive piece, so just know that it does not have to be super mistake free. Okay, so hopefully that helps, and let me know if you need anything. Email me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.